So let me quickly share my screen. Okay. And let's go to the slides. Oh, spoilers. And today we will speak about building a reusable composable. For those of you who think what the composable is, this is a new feature we introduced in Vue 3 called Composition API to have a logic abstraction. And as we noticed, for many users, it still had been really cryptic. They were like, why do I need this? What is this? So we will cover this in this talk. And I strongly believe in Linus Torvalds' quote saying that talks are cheap. Show me the code. That's why I will be really quickly going through slides with some basic theory on the composition API. And then we will jump into the live coding, because I believe you can learn this API only with the real code, not with the theoretical slides. So the main issue with the composition API since its introduction was, what problem do we want to solve? There were people blaming us for, you invented a solution and now you're trying to find a problem, which is not true, because there is a problem we want to solve, and this problem is a logic abstraction. If you never try to abstract the logic to create a layer of abstraction in your application, probably it's quite small, and it's fine for you to just use an old good options API. Let me quickly reintroduce myself. My name is Natalia, and I'm Vue.js core team member. I care mostly about Vue documentation. So if you're reading documentation of Vue 3, there is like 90, maybe not 90, like 86% chance that you're reading something I wrote. And I work as a staff frontend engineer at GitLab. GitLab is using Vue.js as our main frontend framework. And it's quite big. That's why the topic of this talk is really important to me, because we use the layer of abstraction a lot, and we lack a tool for it so much. And also, I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, which means I know how to deal with Chrome, I know how to deal with console, and you will see with all the console logs when I will be trying to debug my mistakes on live coding. There will be some, I promise. So, if you never ever heard what composition API is, in a nutshell, it's a way to create a standalone reactive state of properties. If we take Vue.js as a second version, all the reactiveness is usually baked into the component. So inside the component, you can build a reactive state, and reactive means that when you change something inside the state, your component is rendered. With time going on, of course, there is reactive state in Vuex as our main state manager, but under the hood, it's still a Vue instance. Maybe not a component, but it's a Vue instance. It's not standalone. It's not a standalone JavaScript file. And with Composition API, we can create this state outside of our components. So here we are creating a very simple reactive object with a Vue method ref. I'm just calling the ref function. I pass an initial value, and then I get object, an object with a single property called value, and I can change this value, and any single change of it is tracked. So when I change a value to John Doe, this means that somewhere in my application, something is rendered. And of course, we can use this still in the Vue component. So we can create this login and password. Imagine that we have a form, like 2 input fields with a text and a password, and we bind our properties to this form. And if you were looking at the previous slide, you notice that there is value here, but in the template, there is no value. Where did it go? So when we use reactive properties created with ref in the template, Vue is smart enough to do an automatic unwrapping of these values. and react to them. But this is not the point of the composition API. The point is we can create functions that handle some kind of reactive state and return this reactive state as well as method to change it to be used somewhere in the component. And of course, this piece of logic can be reused. I can import this use form to different components. Maybe to user component, maybe to some kind of login form, maybe somewhere else. And as you can see, I retrieve all the properties just with the use form call in my component. So I import the function, I call it, I have the properties, and I need to return them from setup function. This is really annoying, by the way. Even with a core team member, I still find this annoying that I need to return everything explicitly. This is still not answering why this API is useful. Okay, we can have a standalone function. We can return some reactive properties. Is there a way in Vue 2 we can do the same? What is different? Why do we need this API in general? And the feature of the composition API is flexible and universal logic composition. I will very briefly demo how did we do abstraction in Vue 2. If you never worked with it, for you it will be something like I don't even understand. If you worked with it, you will probably recognize both. So for the flexible part, in Vue 2 we had mixins. And mixin is just a JavaScript object that can contain all the properties Vue component can contain, like data for reactive data, methods, computed, watchers, whatever. And you could use this mixin, you could import it to your Vue component and use it inside of it. Just mixing all the properties in, and if you had the same field in the component, it would be overridden by component. Sounds nice. I can abstract everything, add it to my component. It will have all the properties. But there is an issue. Imagine that I want also to show form ID. What if I have some unique property per form per component? Is there a way to pass it to my mixin? No. Unfortunately, mixin is not flexible. Whatever we hard-coded here is hard-coded. If you put some kind of endpoint to the mixin, it will be called with this endpoint all the time. You cannot modify mixin on the go. There are some tricks with mixin factories, but usually mixin is very hard-coded thing. And it's also not explicit. When you add a mixin to the component, you don't know where all these fields came from. So mixin's non-flexible at all. Universal. There is another way that reminds me a bit about higher order components in React. And this is called scoped slots. So basically, I can create a component called form wrapper. This component would contain a slot, a place where we can put some content. And we can have all the logic in our form wrapper and expose the properties from this logic back to the slot and use them here in our parent component. So this is basically a wrapper that returns some properties. So what is the problem with this approach? What if I want to access login outside of it? It's a problem because the scope of this data for the component with scoped slot is here. That's why it's called scoped slot. We only calculate this in the runtime, which means that outside of our form wrapper component, nothing is happening. We cannot access login. So it's definitely more flexible because I can pass properties here like a props to Vue component, and I can return whatever I want, but I cannot access anywhere. And I cannot access this in the component script part as well. So this is not really universal. So right now, let's switch to the code editor and let's try solving issues with the composition API. And before we start building a composable, let's think about what reusable could be. And I really want to abstract API calls because I believe every single front-end application is doing at least one API call. So my plan is to build a composable that could be used for different APIs. How different? So first one we are going to use is cats API, just because I like cats. So no alternatives. Cats will be fetched. Also, we can select two absolutely random APIs to use. REST, Graphql, whatever. So let's spin the wheel and select two of them. So first one is going to be SpaceX, which is a really cryptic GraphQL API. So we will use it the last probably. And the second one is Rick and Morty. So this one, I used it as a GraphQL as well. So maybe one REST API as well. No, more Rick and Morty, no way. Oh, Dog API, fine. We have this one. So let it be Dog API. Stop spinning, it's fine. And SpaceX because it was first. So you see, it's like it's really defined to have a Dog API, probably because I selected cats. So now random is giving me some alternative as dogs. Okay, let's switch to the code. And here is a very simple application. It's just an input and a search button. And I want to implement search in the API here. So first of all, let's start building our code. So far, we're not abstracting anything. I'm going to create a composable later. So far, we will be just creating reactive properties. So of course, I need a property for the search term. I will call it query. And query is a ref. And here is auto import. So you can see we can import it directly from Vue. It's fine. And the initial value of it is just an empty string. I will add a V model here, which will create two-way binding for the query. And you see that my linter is complaining because we didn't return it from the setup. It's not used. So we need to return the query. And of course, we need something to store the result. And it's also a reactive object with an initial value of empty string. And let's return it here. And now we need to create a method to actually call our cats API. So I will call it call API. Naming is not my strong side for sure. And this is just a function. I will uncomment Axios. So here we want to call an Axios get. And let's go and take the endpoint for cats API. It's here with a breed ID. And instead of breed ID, we will be passing our query value. So until we reach the template where it's already unpacked, unwrapped from the value. Here, it's still not unwrapped. Within the setup function, we need to always access value here. So I just want to call the API, and let's be fancy, let's use async. So there will be const res is equal to Axios get. And let's just make a console log of it to see that API call is happening. Okay, let's go back to the browser. Not this one. Yeah, we forgot to return our method. And we need to assign it to some button. So when I'm clicking the button, I want to call an API. Okay, console. And let's search for some cat breed. I'll wait. Again, gonna be Abyssinian cat. So we have some array of data, breeds, and there should be some kind of the image. So there is a URL I actually want to get. So data 0 URL. Good. Let's just check that it's fine. Okay, Abyssinian cat again. There is a URL. Let's display it somewhere in our interface. So there will be image with a source. So instead of console log, let's make it assigned to result. Value is our URL. And here it will be result with an alternative of some random image. Not really useful alt attribute, but it's really random image. And we only want to display it if we have a result. Okay. Search. So we have an Abyssinian cat. So it's very basic API call so far, and as every single API call, we need to add more bells and whistles. I want also to show a loading state, of course, and I also want to show some kind of error if something happened. So I will add something with a class of error, and this will be a text like, oops, something went wrong. Please try again. And also we will be showing some kind of loading. Now we need to define properties to show conditionally our error and loading state. So more things. So there will be loading state, which is again a ref, but the initial value is false. And there will be error, which is again a ref of false. And our call API becomes bigger. So first of all, we are going to say that loading value is true. And then we will have some try, catch, not even finally. Combination, we will be calling our API in our try. Don't make this to me, so copy paste this one. And I can delete this. Then if something went wrong, I don't need an error actually here. I just want to say that error value is true. And in finally, I will say that loading value is false. And also I want to set error to false at the beginning of the call. Is false. Okay. Now we can display them conditionally in our API. So if there is an error, we show it. And if there is loading, we show the loading state. And then if there is no loading and there is a result, we show the result. And of course, we need to return this all from the setup. And error. Don't mind me. For me, it's like a bit late, and today it was a daylight saving time. I mean, it was yesterday, but it's first working day with daylight saving time. So I'm kind of sleeping and coding at the same time right now. So it's fine, it's fine. Let's try again with Abyssinian. So right now there is some loading state, and then we have an image that is displayed. And let's make an error in our API, whatever. Yeah, something went wrong. We even know what went wrong. Basically, there is no API existing. So as you can see, even with the simplest features of the simplest API call with no parameters, nothing else, we already have kind of bloated component. We have 4 reactive properties, we call an API, we have try catch hook, and it's honestly a bit annoying because we would need to repeat the same logic for every single API call in our application, which is weird if you don't have something fancy like Apollo client. So why not abstracting the whole call into some kind of the composition function, import it here and use. So let's create a file called use API. And you can see that I'm using a convention that is common for React and React hooks, but I really like it. And let's start copy pasting things. We will need ref, this is for sure. And I will be exporting function use API. So let's copy paste and let's think a bit of what belongs to this function and what not. Let's go here and think. So these 4 properties definitely belong here. They're not going to change for any kinds of the query. There will be search term, there will be result, loading, and error states. And I definitely want to keep these as well. I'm calling it, but this part is something that is not here. Because first of all, maybe I'm retrieving the data not with the Axios. Maybe I want to fetch data with something else. Maybe I want to use fetch. Maybe I want to use, I don't know, XHR. Maybe I want to use Polo client. So this is something that our composable shouldn't know about. Our composable is just getting the result with whatever we pass to it. So we can pass a function here. And this is again an improvement comparing to Vue props, for example, where passing functions, unlike React, is not recommended. So I want to only get my data. And for this, I will pass get results, some kind of function, and I will call it here, some kind of asynchronous function. Get results. And this function that I will pass, it should somehow communicate with the search term, because I still want to have a reactive state where I keep the search term. So I will be calling get results with query value. Again, don't forget about value here. And I can even simplify this a bit, because this part also doesn't belong to my composable. The shape of the data I want to get will depend on the API. For cats, it's res data 0 URL. I don't know what is the shape for dogs, and more to say, I don't have no idea what is the shape for the SpaceX. And this will be the responsibility of get result function. What I want to do here is just assign the result of get results to my value. And I'm still keeping error and loading things and return everything from this function. Now I can go here and import my use API from composables use API. And what I want to do is say that constants, I will just copy paste it from here. All these constants will come to me from use API. And now I need to pass a function here. So this function, as you remember, we passed query value here. So it has a single argument, query. And let's see what it's going to return. This is not relevant anymore. And basically, it will be a sync query. So I will have some result again, awaiting for Axios call. And I want to shape the results. So I want to return our res data 0 URL. So this is basically our get results. We pass a query, and here you can see that there is no value anymore because we already extracted value here. This is already a string. We're calling get results with a string. And what get result is doing, it's shaping something we fetched from the API, and we're setting this shaped result to the result value. So let's go and see where I did fail, because I should. So ref is defined but never used. Yeah, thanks, Linter. This is very useful. Okay. Searching for cats. I like Abyssinians because I have Abyss. But we can also search for something else. So you know that it's not. Oh, this is supposed to be a Siberian cat, and this kind of Thai cat, not Siberian, honestly. Yeah, this looks like way more Siberian. Okay, this is our composable. It works with the cats API. You can see component kind of looks better, even with all the logic we put here. It's like way shorter. There is some function. We only pass actually the API call. So let's start to implement some different API. So for this, I will say that this is cat API. So we see this one is different, and let's start with the dog API. It's just a bit simpler, and it's REST as well. So not that many changes. And I'm going just to copy paste this one here and comment this part. So let's go and check our dog API. So what I'm going to have is actually this link. So again, we're searching by breed. So let's start modifying our code for dogs. So we are fetching this, where we want to replace an Affin, I can't pronounce this, Affin pincher. Yeah, I guess so, with our query. Right, and let's console log what we get, because I bet that this structure is not going to match properly. So console log result. Okay, let's go and search for, I don't know, Husky. And of course, it's failing right now because in our try block, it tries to extract data 0 URL. It doesn't exist. So we have data where we have message, and it's actually the image. Let's try to shape our data. So basically res data message. Yeah. Yeah, now we have a Husky. So we didn't change a single piece of the composable. We only change the logic of fetching and data shaping, and it works. But you can say that, okay, this was really simple. I mean, this is just different REST API. So let's take a challenge and go for SpaceX. And where it is, yeah, SpaceX. And I can close this, close cats. I cannot close this. Oh, sorry for this effect. So here is a thing which is called Graphql. And what you can see is Graphql API of the SpaceX. And here is an example query. We don't need it at all. This is Graphql variables. We will need them in a minute. So let's go to queries. And from what I remember from this API, the only entity that contains pictures is ships, not a spaceship. This is actually ships, not even platforms, just SpaceX ships that roam around the platforms, picking up if something went badly, probably. And apparently they don't have images for spaceships or platforms or launches. They only have pictures of their ships. See, there is an image. So before we start on our application, let's start to fetch data here, because this is basically a GraphQL playground. So what I want is I want to fetch ships. So we will go with query. I will call it query ships. It's a good point to always give your GraphQL queries a name. I want to fetch ships. Ship, actually. Do they have ship? Yeah, they have, but only with ID. And I will need to find by name. I have no idea about their IDs. So we will fetch ships. So far, we don't pass any parameters. Let's just fetch all the possible ships we can have. And I want to have their ID and name. Okay. So right now we're fetching all the possible ships of SpaceX. Not that many, to be honest, but okay. And I want to have something where I can use my query parameter. So for this, let's first use something like specific. It should filter. Oh, it's an object. You can see it's smart enough to say, okay, I find it by name, and the name should be specific. Okay. Oh, really? There is no name with specific. Can't believe this. I have a variable quest, so let's see if this works. Quest. Yeah, so there are two of them with quest in the name. But this is a hard-coded variable, and you can do this in GraphQL. You can define a variable name of type string. This is a string for sure. And we can pass this variable here. And here we define, oh, its value. So you can see it's the same. So we basically passed a variable from the outside to our query. So we have this. And I also need an image now, because we will be displaying the ships. Okay. Now we are ready to build the query in the VS Code. And if you work with GraphQL, you probably think right now that, hey, you need a GraphQL client to do this. You need Apollo or Relay or whatever else. Well, it's more convenient if you have them, for sure. But you can fetch GraphQL API with Axios. It's simply a POST request. It's a bit more complicated than with the REST API, but let's create a query. I will call it ships query. And this is just a string. Just a simple one. I'm not even using GraphQL tag or something like this. This is just a string for me. And let's copy paste the logic we have here and comment it on docs. So I can use the power of my autocomplete. So there is a difference. First of all, GraphQL works with POST request. And for the URL here, we need to use an API SpaceX GraphQL one. And as you can see, I'm not passing any query here. Where we will pass the query is the body of the POST request. So for query, we pass our ships query. And here is a magic where we're going to use our search term. Variables. The only variable we have here is name. And here we are going to pass our query. Okay, and let's console log the response. Let's go back to our thing, find the quest. It's going to complain at us, of course. So there is data, where we have data, so data. And we have array of ships. And we only want to display the first one, image. So data, ships, 0 image. Let's try this. Data, data ships 0 image. Okay, quest. Hey, and this is a Go quest, one of the ships of the SpaceX with a really small picture. So with all observable, whatever API we're going to use, we only specify the type of the query and the type of the response, and the data is nicely abstracted in a small JavaScript file. On the profits to this also is it's very testable. It's not any kind of magic because it's just a function that accepts the parameter and returns something. And its reactive state is encapsulated in this function. So I can say it's completely pure because we also can call lifecycle hooks here, but in this implementation, it is pure function. And if you wonder how this looks in the repository, here is an API. Well, I think it's only cats and dogs and didn't implement it in Graphql API. So if you want to try, this is going to be a challenge. I'm going to leave this for like 10 seconds just in case if you're interested. If you're not, it's fine as well. That is like for those who are willing to check a thing, it's here for 5 seconds more. And I will post it in chat probably later. And thank you all for watching this. And I'm switching to this one and stop sharing my screen. So it's not that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I will start to ask. First question is more about Vue.js ecosystem. And people are asking if, did you have any metrics about the success of Vue 3 since the V3 compared to the front-end ecosystem? Did you have any?
I don't think we have any kind of metrics on this simply because there are not many migrations to Vue 3 currently, and I understand why. As a part of the team, of course I want to see migration. As a part of GitLab, I'm like, it's hard. It's hard because not the whole ecosystem is ready. The core is ready. Authors of all the packages around, like component libraries and whatnot, are not ready. So right now we cannot say the use. We see that numbers are growing every single day, but it's really early to say about this.
Okay, so you also answered to the second question that was about the part of Vue 2 compared to Vue 3. So okay, so Vue 2 is more.
Not only. So game changers, there are a few game changers. First of all, it's different reactivity. On Vue 2, it was object-defined property. In Vue 3, it's proxy, which solves a few caveats in Vue 2, especially with defining arrays and objects and their reactivity. Secondly, it's a supported TypeScript because Vue 2 was written with Flow, and using it with TypeScript was kind of a pain for myself. Vue 3 is written with TypeScript, and working with TypeScript is like much better performance. I won't compare publicly to React and Svelte. We have our internal metrics. So if I start sharing them, people will be like, oh, you just try to promote. But comparing to Vue 2, it's 38% of performance added in terms of rendering. And Vue 2 was kind of fast as well. Basically, we are faster than Svelte. Okay, I can say this.
Oh. I have some colleague of mine that won't be happy to hear that.
And then the composition API, which is not only the game changer in terms of logic abstraction, but also if you write a composition API application, it's completely tree-shakeable and bundle size is much smaller than with Vue 2.
Okay. Another question about Vue 2 and Vue 3. If we build an app based on the option API, is it difficult to migrate to composition API?
It's not. They can not only work on the same page, they can work in the same component. You only add one more option, which I was showing. It was set up. it's running before all the other component options, but you can access whatever is exposed from setup in data, methods, computed like anywhere. So you can migrate step by step. And you can even stay with Options API if it serves your needs perfectly. Vue 3 is not about switching to composition completely. It's just an additional feature. It's nice to use. If you have cases for it, it's great. If you don't, you can stay with Options.
And did you have in mind some use cases where you don't recommend to use a composable compose API?
Yes, it depends on your team. It really depends on your team, because when people come from React background and they get used to hooks, maybe it's even better to build all the project with composition API or migrate it faster. If you work with people who were working with Angular or Vue 2 extensively previously, or just with HTML and CSS, I would say don't start with a composition API. Your code base will evolve to the moment when you will need it. If don't, just use Options. It's just simpler to start with it.
Okay. In your code, how the Vue model of the component query and the corresponding ref of use API component are related? How does it link?
It's a great question. So basically, when we return our refs from the use API, and you see that I was using the structuring of query, result, and whatnot, they become a Vue component reactive data. So Vue is in the setup, is actually doing the merging of them when we return them from the use API and then return them from the setup. From this moment, you can access them as typical this query or this result in your other component options, or in the template as just query or result. So this is basically a thing. So I can probably very quickly share my screen again just to explain. Sorry for this effects again. So if we go here, and this is basically just our component, right? Of the setup function. And what I can do is I can create data. And if you work with Vue, this is just, maybe not data, let's create some kind of computed. So basically, this is our computed properties. This is Options API. This is completely fine. And if I have a computed that is like, I don't know, let's say like result updated, something like this, I can basically access this result. I don't know, concat, like something. And of course, I need to return it from computed. So you can see this is also an answer to Jean's question. And this is how it's exposed. Basically, you have this result because you did this. As soon as it's in return, it becomes available in the Options API like it would be in the data. It's basically the same as having it in data. The only problem is I cannot access result updated here in the scope of setup, because setup is running earlier than computed are actually calculated. So like this.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone other question? I think in the moment, people. After it will be too late. Okay. Just wait 1 minute in order to be sure that someone is not writing something.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you switched to Flow to TypeScript. That's it.
Yep.
And now you finally prefer TypeScript.
It's a holy war question. I don't have a right to actually respond to this one because I have a deep experience with Angular since version 2 to version 6. And I have a Stockholm syndrome for TypeScript. Like everyone who worked with Angular for some good amount of time, we're like, you switch to something else, like, there is no TypeScript. How do you work, people? And this is not true. You can live without TypeScript. TypeScript sometimes gives you wrong safety. like a fake self-safety, honestly. But
and about observable, so you say that that you are creating observables, so it's not the same thing as RX. That's it. It's
no. It's a bit different. It's proxy-based one.
okay.
It's not a stream-based one. So
Okay.
and Vue reactivity plays kind of bad with RxJS, from what I experienced. So you can build it on, but it's not like this. But yeah, I really like RxJS. Good, you mentioned it, and I really miss it as well. So bad in Vue, it's like not like it. And grx is still one of the amazing things. But by the way, I was happy to see that my other passion, which is Apollo client, is actually using observables under the hood. Not a Rex one, Zen observable, their own implementation, still an observable.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I think no one else have any question, so we can end now. So, okay, so thank you again, Natalia. We will switch again in a floor map, so in order to be sure that people that were too shy to ask questions now can take the next 5 minutes to ask question, and after it will be done. So thank you again. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you everyone for listening.